So, ladies and gentlemen, possibility seekers everywhere, welcome to the Art of the Possible podcast. This week, this edition, we have the very special guest, the unbelievable, the extraordinary, the talented world champion yachtsman, Australian champion yachtsman, Mr. Rhett Gowans. Welcome, Rhett. How are you?
Thanks, Rob. Thanks very much for the introduction. Yeah, I'm doing great. So, yeah, love to be on board, and thanks for asking me to come on.
No problem at all, mate. No problem at all. Now, you and I, we've known each other a long time.
We sure have.
It's pretty scary, isn't it? But now, to be honest with you, I've always admired the way you've sailed and the way you've gone about your business. And I thought it'd be good to cover probably three areas. There's a little bit about yachting, because that's been a big part of your life and absolutely and mine as well. But also about the coaching, which you've been doing a lot of coaching work you do. And also, I think people want to know just the way you go about doing things. And I think the level you've competed at, we'll talk a little bit about that as well, in terms of what you do when you go and do things. So that would be awesome. I'm going to start out though. What age did you start sailing, and who got you into it?
Back, I suppose, 13 years ago. We lived in Safety Beach and moved to Mornington as a family. And obviously the whole family moved there and moved reasonably close to the water. And both mum and dad thought it was a really good idea to learn a sport, as we had a yacht club right in front of our doorstep. So they were both not sailors. So it was pretty unusual from that perspective, I suppose. And that was myself to start with my older brother, Anthony. And then my younger brother learnt to sail just after me. So we all started at around the age of 10.
Did you have a family boat? I think, did Joe and Annie, your parents, did they get a boat when you guys started to get involved?
Yeah, they did. So we eventually Dad bought a mirror, which you'd know, the little red sail mirror, and sailed it with Anthony, because he wasn't too fond of the Optimist. So Tyron and myself pursued the Optimist sort of pathway and got boats ourselves. And Dad got a mirror, and it was called Burnt Toast. It was a black mirror. And they sort of just potted along and did some club racing, and Tyron and I slowly got into the swing of things, I suppose. So, yeah.
And the Optimist class, for people who don't know, is an international class. It's been around a long time, but it's in a more current form, and probably one of the hottest and most competitive classes, I think, for juniors coming up. That'd be correct, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I suppose when I learnt to sail, it was actually the first Tackers group, which is sort of grassroots level for sailing. They ran at the yacht club. So we were the first group of opties that went through Mornington, and now it's awesome because they've got a fleet of 30 to 40 Optimists training there each week, which is awesome to see. So, great little boat to learn in.
How good was it, Rhett, good or otherwise, having someone like Tyrone, your younger brother, who's also, I know, very competitive? How good was that for you, having that younger brother being so competitive?
It probably made the difference, to be honest with you. It's very hard, I think, doing it on your own, especially for like a single kid. So having Tyrone there to talk about when I suppose you didn't want to talk to mum or dad about, having him there just to bounce ideas off, debrief the day, and just have general fun with him. It makes it really cool and really relaxed, and it's not so tense, I suppose. I can imagine it would be pretty hard being on your own and debriefing with coaches and parents, and then not having an outlet to talk to outside of your parents. Tyron's great, and he's been great the whole time I've been sailing. So it's awesome to have him there. So
you guys, Tyrone, yourself, and Ben, my oldest, I think went through with a really good group of kids around that time. I'm not so sure I've seen it as cohesive as it was back then. But you guys also went through, you had a lot of really good coaches through that time period. I know a lot of overseas coaches. What not so much in terms of who was a great coach, but when you were junior sailing coming through, what attributes did a good coach have for you when you were junior?
Yeah, I think for me, what stood out was a coach that was reliable. So if the coach was reliable, if you wanted to message them, or you could just rely on them turning up early every session, not having a problem with hanging around 15 minutes after the session to take the time out of their day to discuss things with you, that resonated with me the most. And there's definitely like a few coaches that did that really well personally for me, and they're still involved in my life right now. Like Mark Tonajoy springs to mind. He's just awesome. Right. And Adrian Finglas and Johnny. So, being really reliable, making sure, I suppose, depending on what level you're at in terms of your sport, being specific when it needs to be specific, and then just dumbing it right down when it needs to be dumbed down, because a lot of the time it's just basic stuff you're not perfecting, and until you perfect the basics, as you know, there's no progression. So
I love that. It's a great quote Adrian Finglas gave me, and I was lucky enough to have a little bit of coaching by Adrian, not as much as you, but great quote he gave me, which was, he said 80% of world-class performance is perfection of the basics.
Yeah.
And I remember, actually, in fact, you were there. I think you and I did a training session at Sorrento once, which Adrian ran.
Yep.
And we were on the water 3 hours, and we were doing a lot, really a lot of tacking and a lot of maneuvers. And I remember coming in, and my wife Lisa, who Rhett, said to me, "Gee, what were you doing out there for 3 hours?" And I said, "I think we tacked and jibed." For 3 hours? And I'm like, "Yeah, we did," but you would know. But the way Adrian did it was he made it entertaining, because we did all sorts of different maneuvers and different ways of doing that. That for me, the 3 hours flew by. The reality was that's kind of what we did, was tacking and jibing. But when you think about the maneuvers you do in a yacht race, that's a fair bit of it, isn't it?
Tacking exactly right. Yeah. And that's Adrian's probably the master at that type of thing. I remember for about 8 months of my, I suppose, being coached by a high-level coach. We sailed out of Mornington and Sandringham, and we alternated between the two. And for literally 8 months, we tacked and we jibed around a figure of 8 course.
Yes.
And that's no joke at all. There's no joke. And that was in about 2016. And I remember there was a few of us training at the time. We thought, what are we doing here? But obviously there was a plan in place, and it's worked, because that group of sailors have all won national titles and have become really great people. And that was the other thing I forgot to mention was a coach. It's great for them to be a great coach, but even better if they're a good person. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be involved with them for a long time. And if they can build you up to a better person, that we go out into the big wide world, we're not always going to be coaching and sailing. So, improving you as a person's probably the biggest thing as well. So,
I think that's a really great point, Rhett. And I'm glad you backtracked a bit, because it's about that authenticity, isn't it? And they are, at the end of the day, we're humans in this, and and it can get quite tense and stressful. There's those ups and those downs that we all have. What about the coaching group? So you had, as I mentioned before, I think there was a really good coaching group that kind of just used to move around with various yacht clubs when you were growing up and Ben was growing up with you guys. And I thought that made a big difference. So that group of people all had a single aim. They all went to nationals or state titles together. That's me looking in. From you being in there, what was that like with that sort of similar group of people?
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed going to training every time, because I knew I'd catch up with guys like Ben, and going back like Anna and Sam and Jack Felsenthal, and it was a great team environment. So it almost felt like a bit of a catch up or a sleepover versus you going to train really hard, which was great for myself and Tyron. And obviously the coaches were alternating quite a bit, but that was fine. Just keeping it fun, keeping it simple. And competitive. Like, we were all pretty competitive beasts. I know we're quite young, but we all wanted to win as well, which is cool, because we could get off the water and still have a laugh, which is the most important thing. So
and clearly when you're going into yachting, it's is the cost of the boat, the cost of the sails, the endless cost of sails. I remember on Opties, it was constantly what was the latest thing you had to have. And I mean, how, and you've coached also, which we'll get onto a bit later on, but how important was it for you having the support of Joe and Anne, your parents, being supportive with you in terms of your sailing career?
Yeah, I'm glad we mentioned this, because it was in my notes. Like, if without your parents supporting you, you don't get anywhere. So, without them, there wouldn't have been any nationals or worlds or anything like that. And I wouldn't have met all these wonderful people that I've met. So, I really owe it all to them. I was just there sailing a boat and training hard. They mean everything. They've put, a lot of money and sacrifice and all their weekends and weeknights. I remember a lot of the weeknights in the Optimus and the Laser 4.7. We used to leave school at 3:30, drive straight to Seaford. Mum used to drop me off at Seaford. Dad left work early to pick me up at Seaford,
Right.
get me to Sandringham and get to training on time. So they've sacrificed a lot, and I'm just wrapped that I've done a few sort of little results which they take a lot of pleasure in, which makes me happy. So
Yeah, no, massive. But, I got to tell you, though, Joe and Anne, we enjoyed those road trips. It wasn't that bad, Rhett.
Dad secretly loved it, yeah.
And those road trips and road houses and places we used to stay. But and like just for the audience out here, in terms of what Rhett's talking about, yes, there was the support of he and Tyrone and Anthony and the team, the boys. But that support to me, was seeing Joe, with your boats, while you guys were in a coaching session, you had the boats upside down. He was polishing them up. He was working hard, and putting the skin in the game. And those hot days in Queensland especially. It wasn't about just throwing the money at it. And I think that was that's one way, but It was so much more, wasn't it? I mean, it was so much more about being involved in the boat. And I know Joe got involved in the selection of boats for you as well, in terms of a lot of the sailing you went through was what we call one design boats, where all the boats are supposed to be the same around the world. But we all
that's for a different podcast.
That's a whole different. There's at least a series in that, Red. But Joe got very much involved in making sure you had the data behind what made a really good boat, and the boat that fitted for you. So I think that's the kind of stuff that is in there as well. There are those sacrifices, but I think having supportive parents, I think makes a big difference, and them being engaged and kind of enrolled in what you're doing.
Which is crazy because he never sailed. So
I think that's the thing about them. Now he does claim he was a lot better sailor than you're pointing out to, by the way, Rhett. Joe said he was quite the awesome sailor in the mirror at Mornington. But
he can get round the track. I wouldn't go any further, but yeah.
We're recording this, right? Mighty bird toast. Question for you. One thing that's great about what you've done is you've gone from the Optimist, you sailed the Lasers, and you won the Australian Championship in the Lasers. What year was that, Rhett? Was that 2016?
At the end of 2016, yeah. So start of 2017.
So if we talk, you were talking earlier about that coaching you did and the routine you did and the figure of eights you did through 2016, which was that was a call all around that time period, wasn't it? When you were getting that routine together.
Yeah.
What came together for you in the Nationals? What was it?
I think it happened in 2015, actually, thinking back. And then that was the next year at all, because that was at Belmont, that Nationals. And then I had a pretty good result there. And one of the teammates, Brody, got third, which was awesome. And he got selected into the VAS. And that was a really big goal of mine. So I suppose that really spurred me on to train really hard. And I went away for a bit and did some solo stuff training. But yeah, that training in 15 set up the foundations to eventually win the Nationals, which I was just over the moon with, and I didn't expect it at all. I thought I'd be there or thereabouts, but yeah.
Was there a shift in your mindset for that regatta? You talked about being more determined after the previous year where you did well, but you wanted to go to the next level. Was there a shift in your mindset for that next Nationals?
I think so, yeah. I can clearly remember the Belmont Nationals thinking, I'm doing reasonably good here. I can do okay here. Versus Adelaide, I was the aggressor and sort of thinking, this is it, Rhett. Like, this is it. Go get it. This is yours. And sort of saying, this is it. Take it. Versus, I'm content being in an okay position. And I suppose that's a bit of a mindset switch that, like people like Sarah Blank and Mark helped me with, and Adrian. A great little sayings. He every day after the Belmont Nationals, he would tell me, remember, you've got to be the Iceman. Just show no emotion throughout the whole ordeal. Obviously, at the end, you celebrate or commiserate, but you want to be known as the Iceman. And I think a tennis player, he got that from the tennis player in the 70s or 80s. Bjorn Borg, I think, was called the Iceman.
Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that's right too. I mean, I was there in Adelaide when you won that, and I think that was there was definitely that shift. It was your time. I think you said that really well then. I think it was your time. The regatta was good. The conditions were good. You were fast. There was no reason why I shouldn't be you. So
no.
It's like, why not now? Why not you? Why not now? Which is easy to say, but I think in that case it was that, and I think you still got to step up, which you did.
Mm.
You then swap boats, and I thought it was interesting. So you continue with the laser, but you also had the opportunity to sail the new Aero class, which is you won the worlds in the Aero, which is fantastic. Which is just this last summertime, but when we were all having no social distancing. What's the difference between the boats, and how did you swap between the two different boats?
Yeah, so it all started, I suppose, when I had a chat with Tom Pearce, who's the owner of, he sells all the RS boats, the Australian dealer. I had a chat with him sort of in 2018, and he was playing with the idea of me coming to work for him, and I gave it some thought and said I'd love to. And then it obviously goes hand in hand that if you're selling the boats, you kind of need to know what you're talking about, like a car salesman. So I found myself in the boat, and I thought, wow, this is pretty nice. I'd like to do more of this stuff. And the worlds were not in place at that time, and it eventuated, luckily for I suppose all of us, that the worlds ended up being in Melbourne, and we got the chance to do a worlds, and yeah, it'll stem from there. But in terms of differences, I suppose there's a fleet difference in terms of skill level. You've got your laser, which has got 220,000 odd boats around the world, and the Aeros are only 5 years old, and they've got roughly just over 3,000 boats. So it's a completely different ball game in that sense. But yeah, obviously a lighter boat. It steers. It's very helm light, so just if you want it to go somewhere, it goes.
Right.
So you sail it more like a skiff, a lot quicker for the viewers out there, a lot sort of quicker off the breeze, and a lot more dynamic. But yeah,
It's a modern design, I guess, anyway, isn't it? It has the advantage of being a fairly recent design compared to the laser class. Did you have to change anything in the way you approach starting the boat or sailing the boat? Was there any major shifts you had to sort of rewire in your head?
Yeah, I think a lot of little minor ones. I think I'd describe it sort of, for instance, just like, or be a bit heavier as well, because that was the major one, because it involved me eating a lot of food. A 7 rig obviously is 7 meters squared, so you compare it to a laser, it's a laser full rig. So I stacked on the weight a little bit, and then just little things like being a lighter boat, you're on the start line, you're drifting at a rapid rate. So making sure I always have, I suppose, a picture or an image in the back of my mind, like I'm like a 49er or a 29er, and I've always got to keep the flow of the foils a little bit different to a laser, where you can sort of sit and prop and hold your spot. An Aero just goes down the line so quickly. So yeah.
Yes, that would have been a big shift. Let's talk about that from a mindset point of view too, because you've done enough sailing, internationally and locally now that I'm going to put you in a scenario here. So you get a great start, you've come off the pin end, you're looking great, and a 20-degree shift hits against you. Yeah. What goes through your mind at that point?
Yeah, I wrote some notes on this one. It's funny you say this, because it happened to me race 2 or race 3. I can't remember exactly which one it was, at the Aero Worlds, day 1. And yeah, it was probably more like a 30-degree shift. It was massive. You get off the line, you're in a nice position, and then you look over your right-hand shoulder, and all the boats above you are pointing towards the top mark, and you are 12 to 15 boats down the line. Now in a 30, what do we have? A 40-boat fleet. That's quite a big percentage amount of boats. So
essentially, you've gone from hero to zero in the space of a minute.
Yeah, and I wasn't really hero. I was sort of just in the middle of the line, because I didn't want to risk it too much. And then I look over my shoulder and I see it. Honestly, the initial reaction is, oh my God, this has happened. It's a worlds. What am I doing? And then very quickly, I processed it, and I just thought, the first thing I did was just take 2 deep breaths and not look at anyone. Just look at my sail, 2 deep breaths, relax, and then just focus on what I can control. And I'm in dirty wind, which means the boat's sort of ahead of you for the viewers out there and giving you disturbed air. And I just sailed. You sail fast, you do what you can control, I suppose, and limit the amount of maneuvers and cut your losses. And then just think and really acknowledge the fact that this is a race that you are more than likely not going to win. So just look to peg back boats over the course of roughly, you had 40 minutes left in the race to go. And just pick people back and go hard. And that's sort of what I did, and that's what I always try and do: go hard and leave nothing in the tank. So.
But let me come back a bit, because I think there's a really interesting point you made, was that one, you went, well, it's about three. Firstly, you said you kind of get over the initial shock of like, oh my God, this is real, this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like 2 deep breaths, and then I focus on my speed and what I can control. And I think the other thing you just said then was a great one, which was, at the start, let's just go back to the start. You're in the middle of the line, you come off, you're looking good, and you're thinking there, I could probably win this from here. But I love the way you said then, once that all happened, I then reevaluated what was actually possible, and said, I don't think this is going to be the win, but let me see what result I can salvage out of this, like what you might have said, or what result can I work up towards. And I think a lot of people, I know myself, have done it, where you think, I could still win this. I'm going to bury myself even deeper. And sometimes we go and do something crazy. We knee-jerk reaction and tack off, or we sail off the horizon, on hoping, which is not a strategy, but hoping that something will change. And and I think, I don't know if that's maturity or not, Rhett, but just to understand what you said then, it was very similar to an answer Tom Burton gave me to a similar question. I think, what do you think, it's maturity and just the experience that allows you to reset that expectation?
I think so, yeah. And going through the scenario and doing exactly what you said, the knee-jerk reaction, you tack off and you smack right for 3 minutes and 4 minutes. And instead of being 12th or 13th at the top mark, you're 28th. And then it is game over almost. So it's never game over, but you know what I mean? So I think, the most important thing from all what I said then was, I think, just acknowledging the fact that you're in that scenario and then dealing with it. You're over the hill and just deal with it. And hopefully it's all downhill from then on in. You hold on to that in your heart, and you can't get over the fact that you've stuffed one little thing up. It just eats you away, and especially on a 3-race day or whatever, it kills you. So
I think you and I are talking on this podcast in the middle of the coronavirus and COVID-19, and I think that's just what you said then is so important for people sailing or non-sailing, to understand that there's things that are happening to them that are not necessarily their fault. They have happened. And we've got to sometimes we've got to reset our expectations for what we're going to achieve in business or otherwise, because the game is completely changed. But you've got to control what you can control. In the aero worlds, I remember there was I think it might have been after day 1 or 2, Rhett. I remember speaking to you, and you said you had a string of, like, I don't know, maybe second, third, maybe a fourth in there or something.
Yeah, 4 seconds.
Yeah, you were like, hang on here. I kind of thought I would have broken through at this point. And then the next day you did. What was the shift that changed in you between those couple of days? We'll take the wind conditions out, but just what maybe changed?
Yeah, I think, the first thing I suppose is de-rigging, coming off that day and thinking it's not the end of the world. You're sitting in second position. That is absolutely awesome. And if I'm disappointed with that, imagine what my performances are going to be like if I improve. So that's what I thought. First thing, you just clear your head, get home. Dad and Tyrone and Mum, my whole family's really, really good at calming me down, especially Mum, and just putting things into perspective, and just saying, look, you're coming second at a Worlds. It's absolutely awesome. And I'm obviously striving for a bit more, but putting into perspective, coming back with a really good day's sleep. And I turned up the aggressiveness a little bit, if I'm going to be honest. I really went out to kill, so to speak, on day 2 and 3 and 4. And I suppose I don't want to say that's the only difference. The wind also dropped, but a mental mindset and really wanting how much do I want it, I think was the difference. And really, really hiking hard. I hurt my body.
So going that next, what we call in cycling the suffering. When you go harder, the suffering. If you're not prepared to suffer and suffer harder, that's he's not going to get there. How important was knowing that you'd won that nationals in the laser radial a couple of years earlier, to knowing that you could come back and do it again and win the Worlds? Did that play into it?
I was just as in the. Are you talking about the result at the end? Yeah. It's all confidence. So obviously that plays in the back of your mind, but you don't really want to string onto the past too much. But I think just using those experiences, for instance, like that race we talked about, knowing that there's going to be an opportunity that more than likely will flick back. If you just keep hanging in there, it'll all turn. I suppose when you turn the page, it all gets better. So and it ended up happening that race as well. So I think just trusting your experiences and trusting the environment you've been involved in the past 5-6 years, and all the coaches and the people that have helped you, including yourself, like just everyone, all your experiences, and just backing yourself. Yeah.
Who were your sailing heroes growing up in the Opties? Do you remember who they would have been?
Yeah, probably. First one's probably Tom Slingsby, and I don't even know if was he winning things then. I'm not sure, but
I think he's been winning a long time.
Yeah,
Tom Slingsby
he's definitely my number one fan. And then I suppose a little bit later on in the Opties, Sarah Blank was really big in my career.
Yeah, no, she's fantastic, isn't she? And a great coach too, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly one of my honours is getting coached. Anytime I could get coached by Sarah, I travel kilometres of the trailer on to get coached by Sarah. It's just fantastic. And I must say, I have actually led her for two laps in my entire career, Rhett. I just thought I'd point that out to you. It's like I never got
I'm probably the same.
But 2 laps, it was awesome. I think the reason she passed me was I was so in awe looking at her going past me. That was amazing. She's great. What about today? Who are your sailing heroes today?
Yeah, well, Tom Slingsby's still the first one that comes to my mind. Probably some laser sailors. So Tom Burton, obviously, I love what he's been able to do. In spite of, I suppose, his body shape, not being a massive guy in the fleet that he races. He's racing bigger guys than him, and he managed to obviously win the gold medal in Rio. Pavlos Kontaitis, the Cypriot, who was the first Cypriot to medal at an Olympics.
It was a medal in anything, wasn't it? Was that he medaled? That was the first medal I'd ever had. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah. So he's right up there. And Crystal Weir, who helped me get to where I am, coaching and also hopping in a boat and helping us out for about a year.
Right. Yeah, fantastic people. I would agree wholeheartedly with great choices. Let's talk about coaching now. We're talking a little bit about Sarah and Crystal, also great coaches. Yep. You've moved into coaching and doing a lot more coaching. What attracts you to coaching? What do you like about it?
I think the biggest thing is seeing the reward on people's faces when you've taught them something and they go and implement it, whether that's racing or learning how to sail for the first time. I think just teaching someone a new skill and seeing them implement it is the greatest joy you can receive as a coach. And as I said, it's right up to high level coaching versus someone who does their first tack. So that's the biggest thing for me. Yeah.
And I know you've got a wonderful connection. I know people who I've spoken to who are getting coached by Rhett, and they just go, "Oh, wonderful Rhett. He's unbelievable." And he's so good. And I think it's that personal side that I think you mentioned earlier, what you used to like in coaches, whether they were human first and maybe a coach second.
Yes.
What are important elements for coachees? So the people you're going to coach, what are you looking for in someone who wants to be coached?
Yeah. Is it a student per se?
Yeah. What do you look for in a good student?
Yeah. I think, and the biggest thing is probably someone that has got their ears open the whole time. So definitely someone that wants to listen, is happy to be not told, but have conversations constantly about, methods and things that can change. Be happy to and open with the coach and communicate with the coach. There's nothing worse than you're coaching someone and they're just a closed book and don't want to open up to you because you feel like you're sort of trying to break down a wall. So I suppose if the athlete or the student in any sport or anything in life can open themselves up and be honest with you and just tell it how it is, I think you break through that wall very quickly and you make rapid improvement.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a series on Michael Jordan coming out on Netflix, I think, this month. But one of the things that Michael Jordan spoke about was the fact that he thinks his number one skill was not his actual acumen or his athletic ability on the court, which is unbelievable. He said he believed his number one skill was his coachability, was he was actually always open to be coached. And I'd never heard that before, but I thought it was a really interesting skill set. I don't think people call it a skill set, but I actually think it is. And given what you just said then, if someone can be coachable, and I know you're coaching a lot of masters as well. You've done a lot of coaching with masters or older sailors. You know, of all levels, all of them can be good. Where it's harder when you get older, you can have the ego in the way that you're getting coached by someone. You be coaching people twice your age, I imagine, Rhett. Is there any difference between the juniors to the masters in terms of coaching?
Yeah, it's really interesting because you mentioned the coachability thing. Adrian was the one that drummed that into me at an early ages. How coachable are you? Like from a coach talking to us as athletes. And that was something that resonated with me. I just thought, how coachable am I? So then you go back and you think, am I doing the right thing here? Am I asking enough questions? And that's probably when I started asking heaps of questions, and I still to this day, and always will, just ask heaps of questions. But back to the coachability thing, I find master sailors very coachable. Their coachability level is quite high, I suppose, just because of the fact they've been on this earth quite some time. They've been through a lot of the experiences versus coaching a junior or a youth for the first time sailing, or even the experienced youth kids. There's just that little bit of learning that they've got to do, and not all, but most. I find it a little bit trickier, but there's always ways around it.
Yeah. And do you adapt yourself with different personalities when you're coaching? Is there a way you flex for the different type of personalities or people when you're coaching?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, with the kids, obviously, you've got to be a little bit more authoritative. I suppose that's the right. I don't know if that's the right word, but they like to be told what to do a little bit more than master sailors who do have their own ideas, and they want to explore those ideas. Or the more experienced youth sailors, they want to explore those ideas and go for a 3-hour downwind. And you've got that trust in them that, you know, they can do that, versus younger sailors or inexperienced sailors. You're probably going to rein it in a little bit more. So you're always changing, always flexible, always adaptable. So.
And what other sports are you into, Rhett? You've done the sailing thing. What did you do outside of sailing?
Yeah, I'm looking for a new sport. I did. I was quite heavily involved in soccer for a long time before I got serious with sailing. So I loved soccer, loved athletics, love AFL, like ping pong, pool. So I love all sports, to be honest with you. So yeah,
I find that very common with especially elite athletes. They just love all sports. You know, they take all things from it. You know, they always look at all sports and how do you win? How does that one work? And they're kind of fascinated with the rules and fascinated with what the skill level is, and they take something from that. I guess that's that coachability and having that kind of open mind like you do as well. Yeah. What about study for you? What are you up to study-wise?
Yeah, so I finished my Bachelor in Economics and Business in 2017, and I've been working for the last couple of years with Tom. And then, that's basically it for me study-wise. Outside of that, just finished school. And
So one accolade I want to give you, though, is because I thought you won the Aero 7 Worlds. But I think a lot of people won't know. I mean, that's an achievement in its own, but you did that while you were kind of working for Tom as well. And I remember you were kind of the go-to guy at the regatta for making sure everyone had their boat and all the international competitors had their parts and sails and things. And so kind of was, I thought, now honestly, full credit to you, because you not only did you win the regatta and have that to think about, you actually were kind of doing a day job while you were there as well. And sometimes, you were running around a lot with a little additional pressure. One thing I did notice, despite all of that, and I think for the most part, there might have been the odd day, but for the most part, what I noticed being out on the water coaching with my youngest Lockie was out there, was that each of you who won their division were typically the first on the water every day. Be it Sophie in the 5, and yourself in the 7. I've forgotten the guy who ran the 9s, but the guy from the UK. You three were kind of on the water earlier than anyone else. Why is that?
Yeah, so I think I suppose trying to simplify it as simple as possible is you're out on I suppose you're involved in a sport that involves a lot of data collection. So you can do that in a few different ways. You get first-hand observations when you're racing. You go out early and you sail on your own and you get second-hand observations, or you enter a yacht club and you look from the balcony and just observe from afar. Now, I suppose the people that do well like to get on the water early to collect as much data as possible over a larger period of time. So, typically sailors like to get out in the water for a Worlds probably an hour before the start. We were racing quite close to shore and just basically collect data. So,
tell me the data you're collecting, Rhett. When you're on the water, what data are you collecting?
Yeah. So I suppose you've got this overarching view over the day before you go out, and that's obviously your weather forecast. So you look at that, and that's just a no-brainer. You look at that to see potentially what you're racing in, and that's in your back of your mind. But the number one thing you look at is you go out, you obviously check your wind, check your temperature, check the wave angle, all those basic things, tide readings, which thankfully wasn't a big factor at Black Rock. And then you're probably getting into your nitty gritty type of things. So Mark, who coached me and is still coaching me, likes to categorize your day into 3 different types. A type 1, which is your very, I suppose, stable oscillations. So your breeze is going sort of 5, 10, 15 degree oscillations every couple of minutes.
Right.
Your type 2 breeze, which is a sea breeze day, so a one-side advantage day. Typically in Australia, it's left-hand bias, and then your type 3 is you're very unsure. It's a bit of an oscillation, and then you might get a big left-hand shift, and it might be favoured for 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then sporadic oscillations again. So before each race, I gave it a type, and I didn't write it down anywhere, but I had it in the back of my mind what I thought it was.
You chunk down the day. You kind of chunk it down a little bit to what you're going to be looking for given that day.
Yeah, exactly right. And when we were racing it was sad. Obviously, the fires were happening, so we had the smoke affect our racing quite a lot,
Yes,
which was a massive factor. Massive factor, because that obviously prevented the sun from coming out, and obviously the sun can't burn off the smoke. So we're like racing in a big dome of smoke, which impacted the stability of the wind, the temperature, how you went about your day in terms of hydration and food and all that stuff. So it was an interesting week. So
I think that's a great one. That last one you talked about, when you have that external factor with the smoke that was there. But I think there are a lot of people who weren't as conscientious as you were, Rhett, who didn't realise, they saw the smoke, they realised it was going to be harder to see, but didn't actually go, actually, this is going to dehydrate me dramatically. And didn't carry enough water. So sometimes you have these external effects. Are we in control? We can't control the smoke coming in. We can't control the bushfire, but we can react to it in a different way. And it was different than the day before. And I think the way you picked it up and said, I'm going to need probably 2 bottles or another way to rehydrate out there, can make a huge difference, because hydration, you can't think if you're dehydrated or you just affect the body.
Yeah, and exactly right. Like, I think there were 3 or 4 people that actually didn't compete in the latter races in some of the days because they were that dehydrated. Their throat was burning up and their eyes were getting a bit, so glasses, water, all the stuff you said, pretty basic stuff, but important stuff.
And I must admit, it was unprecedented. It was a bit, it was incredible. Yeah. I'd never seen it on Port Phillip Bay either. The amount of smoke and the lack of visibility and the dehydration was quite unique. But again, we had to react to it. What's next for you in terms of sailing, Rhett? What are you doing? I know you were hoping to go to the Aero 7 Worlds this year, but Corona's probably taken care of that. What's next for you on the radar?
Yeah, well, it actually just got cancelled today, so that won't be happening. It was going to be obviously that event, and then outside of that, I'll probably just compete in the laser states, and there's an Aero Nationals coming up in early January in Adelaide. So, yeah, outside of that, not much at all. So it's great. I'm probably going to be coaching after COVID finishes up.
Hopefully,
because I love the coaching side of it, and just sail for a bit of fun, and might go out in the air on the laser just on the odd occasion. So
fantastic. Now also your brother Tyrone is coaching as well.
Yes, he is instructing. Yeah,
it's interesting to see, what does he love about it? Because I know he's done a few things, but he seems to be attracted back to coaching. What he loves about the coaching as well? Does he like it?
We are quite different because I love the coaching side of it, and I struggle a little bit with the instructing side of things. Tyron's the opposite. He loves instructing. So for those out there, instructing sort of, you're typically teaching people that have done less than 6 months sailing.
Right.
And yeah, Tyron loves that side of things. He does that at Sandringham, not at the moment, but yeah, he loves that, and most of the time he does that in keel boats. So he's on a big 25-foot boat on a boat with 4 other people, and he's pulling them through I suppose teaching them the ropes and showing them how to do it. So yeah, he loves that interaction, and I suppose the teamwork and the companionship that you get from that type of style of instructing. So yeah.
Well, you both of you have great reputations in coaching and instructing as well. So probably full credit to Joe and Anne again for bringing you guys up and making you such great coaches, which we all benefit from, to be honest. And I've been lucky to be coached by you, Rhett. So I've certainly enjoyed that. Now one thing I've got to ask you is my kind of final question here, Rhett. That have you got great kudos over that photo I published on Sailing Shack of you one-handed riding your boat and knocking down a Gatorade at the same time? I mean, has that just set the world on fire for you? Has that changed everything?
Yeah, I had to shut down my phone for 2 weeks. I was just getting bombarded. No, it's great to see. Great time photo. So for those that don't know, give it a look up. So
I got to tell you, I checked the stats on Instagram before we jumped on this podcast. It's literally got double. It's double. So even that last shot of you in that magnificent downwind maneuver, the shot of you riding the boat one-handed, he's got double the amount of reactions. So you're absolutely one of the highest ones we've done for the year, I think, is that picture of you doing your email impersonation. So that's fantastic. We'll share that photo on the podcast a bit later on.
Great.
Rhett, fantastic. Thanks for your time, mate. It's been really good. It's been really informative.
No worries at all, Rob.
Covered a lot of ground, but it's been really awesome. So thanks so much, bud.
Great. Cheers. Thanks for having me, Rob.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.